So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome author, game designer, MIT credentialed scientist, podcast host, and SpaceX mission manager, Andrew Rader. So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks.
So Andrew, I'd like to firstly congratulate you on all your achievements. So can you please share with us how your journey started and where your passion for space started?
Yeah, it started when I was really young. I don't remember exactly, but I really liked Star Trek and Star Wars, and I was actually not that interested in sort of everyday regular space that we do now. But I was really interested in science and sort of the future of humanity, and I wanted to be part of that.
Yes.
But I read some really influential books when I was in university. I actually went to university to study how to design airplanes. I was really interested in airplanes. My mother worked for an airline, and so I grew up flying a lot,
Yes.
and I wanted to build airplanes. And so I didn't even go to university to study space engineering. But when I was there, I had some influential friends and I read some influential books and came to realize that the way we've progressed throughout history is
Yes.
incrementally. And we have to do what we can with what we have. And we're never going to be able to just sit around and wait for innovations. Innovations come by baby steps, by us planning, but by us needing something. So it's a chicken and the egg problem. So what happens is you create a need for innovation before you can have an innovation, and that creates a motivational force that drives people to achieve things. And it sort of ties in with my view of history, but it made me realize that if we wanted to eventually become Star Trek, have a Star Trek future for humanity, then what we have to do is innovate in small incremental steps with the technologies we have today. And that's what really got me interested in studying space flight in the present, because if we apply our current technology and stretch ourselves as a species and do things like embark on journeys to Mars and start settling other planets to start the process of branching out into space, that will drive our technology, and that we will eventually sort of become Star Trek. But it's the step that is required to get there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, as you're a mission manager at SpaceX and you hold a PhD in aerospace engineering from MIT, specializing in long duration space flight, in 2013 you won the Discovery Channel's competitive television series, Canada's Greatest Know-It-All. So, can you please share with us more about that? And did having gone through that experience open doors and other opportunities within your career?
Yeah, that was a really fun experience. So I was on this reality show, as you say, called Canada's Greatest Know-It-All, and it was a competitive series, 10 episodes. It was kind of like Mythbusters. It was like competitive Mythbusters, and it was super fun. Every day we'd wake up, and it was about a month, 5 weeks, and every day we'd wake up and have a new challenge that they'd prepare for us, having to solve some kind of problem. So it was problem solving, and so it was just the most amazing experience. But I think what it really did was kind of give me the confidence to go out and follow my dreams. Before, I
Yes.
was a little bit too concerned about just being too safe, or being too careful. And I think that it really gave me the confidence to figure out what I wanted in life and to go for it, basically. So I think that it really had a profound experience in influence on my life.
Awesome. And did you meet or connect with a lot of people during that experience?
Yeah, I did actually. I'm still in touch with pretty much everyone who was on the show with me. And I mean, we do different things, and I think all the rest of them are back in Canada still. I did end up moving to the United States, but but I'm still connected with them and talk with them about projects and stuff that we're working on. So yeah, it's good.
Amazing. So broadly speaking, can you share with us what an aerospace engineer does? Obviously, while not getting too technical and respecting your current confidentiality requirements at SpaceX.
An aerospace engineer is studies how to build things that go into air and into space, basically. So an aerospace engineer builds and designs really airplanes and also spacecraft and rockets and things like that. So it's kind of the application of actually various other types of engineering. It's sort of a focused application of other types of engineering, like mechanical engineering, which is to do with structures and mechanisms, and avionics, electrical engineering for avionics, for kind of how computers and how electronic devices work in airplanes and spacecraft. Software engineering as well could, be in the aerospace field, but it's sort of taking a lot of different fields of engineering and applying them to air and space applications.
Oh, amazing. So you're also an author of a number of books: Epic Space Adventure, Mars Rover Rescue, Europa Experience, and a children's book, Rocket Science. Was becoming an author of books and the subject of space something you always knew you wanted to do? And was this an organic process for you, or did it, was it just something completely new?
Was it organic? So it wasn't something that I knew I always wanted to do. I did sort of always want to write books, but not necessarily about space. Actually, I had this idea to write a book about a duck who was afraid of water, and duck parents would kind of gradually get him acclimatized to water. He liked flying. Ducks can both fly and swim. So, but it turned out there is a book about that. But anyway, because I was also really interested in space, I kind of feel like space is something that gets kids interested in science, and it was really just kind of allowing opportunities to come along. And what happened was there was a YouTube video about a giraffe in space, and I thought the illustrations were really good in the video. Yes. And I thought, hey, this would make a perfect children's book. So I just reached out to the person who did the animation for that video series, and I asked him if he wanted to write a children's book on that basis, and he did. So we just wrote the book together, and he did the illustrations, and I did the concept and layout and the kind of text of the book, and we figured out how to do it. And I did the production of the book, and so just kind of decided that's something we wanted to do, and then we did it, and it was popular. So we wrote 2 more books in the same series, expanding. So the first one was Epic Space Adventure, and then we wrote Mars Rover Rescue and Europa Excursion. And then Rocket Science was a book for older kids, how rockets and spaceships work.
Yes.
Yep. So that's the children's book.
Amazing. So your latest book is Beyond the Known. So can you share with us more about what the book is about and what it meant transitioning from writing children's books into adult books?
Yeah. So Beyond the Known is the story of humanity. And I've always kind of really been interested in history and also science. And it sort of combines those 2 passions of mine, history and science. And it occurs to me that the thing throughout history that has been really influential in driving our technology has been exploration. If you think about it, humans started out in a small part of Africa, and over tens of thousands of years spread out across the entire world. What enabled them to do this? This is different from most animals. And if you think about it too, humans are different in many ways, but humans would not be able to survive on most of Earth without technology, without the ability to create fires and make shelters and make gather tools and clothing, make clothing from animal skins and things like that. So it's really our technology that has enabled us to spread out across the entire planet. And this spreading across the planet is actually the thing that drove our technology as well. And exploration is it's almost like exercise for society. It's something that challenges us. It
Yes.
forces us to stretch, and in doing so, we solve problems that often we didn't know existed. And so we find technical solutions for problems purely by the act of going out and learning new things. And it's always been a huge driver of human progress, exploration.
Amazing. So you're multi-talented and also have your hand in game designing. So can you tell us more about this and what this is and what sort of game designing do you do?
Yeah, I have a number of games. So my background is really more in strategic war games. So I've done a number of strategic games, sort of military history related games. I made a really big, complex First World War game. That was sort of my first one. And I also have a game of Animal Evolution, which is sort of a pretty quick card game. It's called Evolve. I have a game of U.S. politics. Actually, just
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That must be quite interesting in this time.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And the game that I've worked on for the longest is called Stellar Horizons, and it was just released maybe 2 weeks ago. And it is a game of expansion into the solar system, and it's actually the project that I've been working on the longest. I think I've been working on this project for about 15 years, and it's kind of gone on and off. And I started out wanting to tell the story of how humanity could branch out into the solar system. So if you look at science fiction, often we see really futuristic ships jumping from star to star with technology that is almost incomprehensible to us, transporters and warp drives and things like that, right? And I want to tell the story of how we get there, because unless we know how to get there, we don't really know what to do.
No.
And Stellar Horizons is basically telling the story of how we get to be Star Trek. It starts out with current technology and goes through the next 150 years of progress. And by exploring and expanding through the solar system, we learn how to become spacefaring. We learn how to build better ships. We learn how to harness better technologies. And eventually we are able to start the process of going to other stars. And so sort of the end of the game is leaving our solar system for the first time to go to other stars.
That's amazing. So in the gaming, in the games that you're part of designing, so there's obviously a lot of education involved, and there's purpose in the specific games that you design, I take it.
Yeah. So are you asking, are the games educational?
Yeah. So I mean, there's obviously, because I know some games people say, help like with coordination, problem solving, those type of things. So I'm just kind of wanting to get a feel for, the games that you're involved in designing.
Yeah. I mean, I think every game is solving problems. That's what we really like about them. It's a challenge. Yes. And that's sort of the whole thing about exploration is really, it's a challenge for us as individuals, but also us as a society. And challenging ourselves is really important, because challenge is how we grow.
Yes.
And so a game sort of presents a challenge to us to solve, and I think we kind of get this burst of brain chemicals, reward chemicals, endorphins or whatever, for dopamine, probably. Dopamine response for successfully solving problems, right? So it's kind of creating problems for ourselves to solve. I always think of a game as solving a complex mathematical problem with a story. And
so absolutely.
The story, both of those elements are really important. And like some games are more on just the problem solving side. for example, chess really doesn't have much of a story, but it has sort of a story, the pawns and the knights and the bishops, but it's a very basic story.
Yes.
But it's pretty heavy on the problem solving. And other games are very heavy on the story and maybe less on the problem solving. But I really kind of like games that capture both the problem solving and the story. So that's what I try to do in a game.
Yes, absolutely. So I do want to touch on leadership. So obviously leadership is a big subject at the moment, without getting political, but I wanted to ask you in terms of your skill leadership, or, in the things that you do, what do you think needs to change to improve the current narrative, in the entrepreneurial and work space, and what are some of the key leadership elements that work for you, or that are unique or different to you, in terms of all the things or all the projects that you work on?
Well, I think there's a few things that are really important in leadership. One is vision. So being able to formulate and communicate the goal
Yes,
and maybe the way you would get there, and sort of what everyone's role is, and inclusion, sort of making everyone feel comfortable reaching that goal. And again, it's also sort of challenge in a sense. It's the right level of challenge. We need challenges that we can solve,
yes,
but challenges that aren't it's too easy, right? So you want just the kind of the right level of difficulty. And I think that there's a term for this, I forget, but it's a term in gaming. And actually, in fact, there's this idea that you could solve all the world's problems by converting them into games, because people will be motivated to to solve the problems. So
yes,
for a leader, vision is really important, and communication and inclusion, having everyone come along and understand the goal. And I think one of the things that's really important is the leader sort of getting their hands dirty and being involved in the problem solving as well. And so it's lead by example is really important. Rather than telling people what to do, you show them what to do. And so I think that's one of the most important things, a leader who is not afraid to get their hands dirty.
yeah, absolutely. So what would you say some of your biggest lessons have been within your career, that you're allowed to mention? So I don't know if you want to take it from, your current role, or just in general going through the process of your career. What have been some of your biggest lessons?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to take risks is important, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself and jump into the unknown. So if you don't really know something, that's good. Like if you jump into a task and you're kind of lost and you're not really sure what to do, that's good, because it means you're learning,
Yes,
right? And that's really
absolutely.
important. So that's how growth happens, going into the unknown, just like exploration. I think that's sort of a theme that that really resonates with me. But just discovering the unknown for yourself and challenging yourself is really important. So if you learning a new programming language, or learning a new language, or whatever, but learning a new skill is really important. So not
Yes,
being afraid to challenge yourself in that way, and just kind of go for it, basically.
absolutely. So your passion for space and life beyond planet Earth is evident. When writing your children's book, what were some of the key lessons about space that you want children to learn? And why do you believe it is so important for children to develop such an interest in space from a young age?
Yeah, well, I mean, is it important for children to develop an interest in space specifically? I think space, in a way, is a proxy for all kinds of science and education
Yes,
and things like that, right? So I don't really mind in particular if children are interested in space or not. I do see space as sort of, in some sense, the destiny of humanity, because it is the next great frontier, right?
yes,
As humans, we've been pretty much everywhere on Earth, and we've grown through that process. And I think the next process is to grow as a species as we expand into the solar system. The message I try to communicate, both with the children's books and with the game as well, and in a sense, the game is sort of being able to play in the same environment as the children's books are written in, but the game is for adults and the books are for children.
yes,
Is that the solar system is a really fascinating place. I mean, we learn about it in school. It's kind of interesting because if you quiz the average person on the planets, most people can name probably all the planets, at least most of them, but that's all they know, right?
Yes.
They don't know anything else, generally speaking. I mean,
Yeah.
unless they have a specific interest in space, but they don't really have a good sense of how big they are, how far away are they from each other or from us.
Yes.
Where, you know, that sort of thing is not really something people can readily visualize. But the solar system is a much more fascinating place than we're taught in school. And there are hundreds of worlds in the solar system, and most of them are moons actually that are just really interesting, like Europa, which is a moon of Jupiter and is covered in ice sheets and has a subsurface ocean, and Titan, which is the most Earth-like place in the solar system and has a thick atmosphere, and you could strap on wings and fly like a bird because the air is so thick and the gravity is so low.
Yes.
Is covered in liquid oceans of hydrocarbons, so more, you know, fossil fuels than we could ever mine on Earth, hundreds of times the amount that exists on Earth.
Yes.
And so, and all the gold that's ever been mined has come down on asteroids and hit the Earth later. All the platinum and gold and precious metals have bombarded Earth later. So the Earth so the solar system is really diverse and rich place that you know, could provide resources to sustain our civilization for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, millions of
Yeah.
years probably. Yeah.
Amazing.
So, yeah,
It is
and that's
amazing.
yeah. So it's just how fascinating the solar system is. It's sort of trying to give more dimensions to it. It gives some depth to it, because it kind of seems like just, oh well, we learn the names of the planets and that's kind of the end of it.
Yes. And then it kind of becomes uninteresting. You know, I think people need to go deeper on these things. So what are some of your biggest career highlights?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at a number of companies. First one was a satellite company,
Yes.
and I worked on small teams. It was really fascinating actually, and this was a lot of fun actually, because I worked on small teams doing projects that you know, were not necessarily world changing, but we had goals. I mean, to build satellites. I mean, it's really interesting. Things we built actually went up into space. So
Wow.
so you know, really interesting.
Yeah.
And small dynamic teams was a really great way to get things done. So that's sort of something I really learned from that. And then I worked at a software company and discovered that I really liked teaching. I would go to different companies and as a consultant, and I really enjoyed interacting with people and helping them learn things and solve problems. Actually, it was sort of about how to solve problems using the software. So that was pretty interesting too. Now I work at SPACEX, and a lot of it is solving problems as well.
Yes.
Except for me, sometimes it's programmatic problems, how to get things done, uh, and yeah, it's really enjoyable.
Amazing. So the latest launch has really inspired the nation and the world. Do you believe this has and will continue to inspire a new generation of space enthusiasts to pursue a career in this field?
Well, I hope so. I know a lot of people compared it a bit to Apollo, when a lot of the kids were watching and getting really excited about space launches,
Yes.
and something that has been somewhat absent, particularly from North America for the last 10 years, I guess.
Yes.
And yeah, and so I hope so. It's something about it that is just really amazing that we can do something like that.
Yeah.
you
And also
know,
it brings the nation and the world together, considering the world's in chaos at the moment. So I think in the middle of all these dramatic world events going on, I think that it really, for a period, just unified people.
yeah, it's definitely a contrast, and it's actually kind of similar in a way to what was going on in the 60s with
Yeah.
during Apollo. I think, who was it? One of the astronauts said that Apollo 8 saved 1968 because there was so much unrest and strife and sadness in the world back in 1968. And it was a really tumultuous, rough year. And then just seeing Earth for the first time with human eyes from afar as
Mm.
humans circled the moon on Christmas Eve, 1968. And we got that amazing Earthrise photo.
Yes.
Was really, really something that I think has the capacity to inspire us and remind us that we're all on one planet together. So we might as well
Yes.
get along. You know?
Absolutely.
How petty our squabbles seem from space.
For sure. That's what I was thinking. Like even now that the astronauts are up there now, it must be like, and obviously they're doing what they need to do. But yeah, it's like you said, it becomes so insignificant. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, so you're also the co-host of a weekly podcast called Spellbound, taking science, economics, history, and psychology. So, can you share with us more about the show and some examples of great guests you have interviewed?
Yeah. So the show is kind of anything that myself or Julian, the co-host, are interested in, and that kind of covers a really wide range. And I
Yes.
tend to want to pick guests who are more scholarly, maybe, and Julian tends to want to pick guests who are kind of more maybe trending at the moment or something like
Yes.
that. I would say something like that. Not fashion or something, but he definitely is interested in also kind of topical, at least I would say,
Influences?
yeah, something like that. Yeah, where, for example, generally my favorite guests are authors of books I've read because I already feel like I've connected to them in some way.
Yes.
So if I read a really good book. For example, one of my favorite books is called Why Nations Fail, and
Yes.
it's written by a pair of Harvard professors, and I think it explains very well the sources of wealth inequality and
Yes.
how countries, basically you take two countries that enact different policies, and over time, one country becomes wealthy and one country becomes poor, or actually more likely concentrates wealth in the hands of the elite. And how does that come about? And what do we do to try to create institutions where wealth is relatively well distributed, but also brings the greatest human flourishing for all people, right? So,
Yes.
so I really enjoyed interviewing this Professor Darren Asimoglu, who wrote this book. Uh, we interviewed a number of other authors that I really thought their books were great. So that's kind of a treat to be able to interview people who've read their books and really enjoyed them.
Yeah, amazing. Um, so your passion for history, science, and being a space enthusiast has really developed some entrepreneurial aspects in your own life. Do you believe that working with innovators and change makers has contributed to your own creative and entrepreneurial side?
Yes, but I don't know that I have any really good examples of it. I think that a lot of the people I work with are sort of naturally curious and innovative.
Yes.
So yes, I think so. But I mean, I think that to some extent I'm sort of self-motivated. I don't really know exactly where my motivation comes from, but trying to make a difference and really enjoying challenges and things like that. So I think that's true, but I think to some extent I kind of am driven enough that I'm just always gonna do things like that, kind of
Yeah,
do
for
different
sure.
things, and yeah.
Well, it comes naturally, I suppose, because for some people it's not a natural thing. So,
Well, it does to some extent come naturally, but I think that it's something I've also learned a little bit. I mean, I've always been really curious. In fact, if you had to, if I had to describe the virtue of humanity that I think is most important, it's curiosity,
yes,
right? Ask questions and try to learn things. I think, kind of in a sense, that is the meaning of life.
yes.
is is trying to learn things and ask questions, and I think we just really enjoy uh, learning things and asking questions and solving problems, and it's something that gives us the right dopamine in our brains to
Yeah,
reward system. So yeah, it's good.
exactly. So, what is the most exciting aspect of being an aerospace engineer? Or are there multiple?
The idea that something you work on actually goes into space, which is pretty phenomenal. I mean, it's something, it's beyond our planet, it's beyond our experience, it's otherworldly and really interesting. So I mean, that's something that I really like. The other thing is, it feels like you're making a difference.
Yes,
So
for
I
sure.
think
You're
it's being
building something.
part of the future, and
Yeah.
and I think it's the future we want to create. I think, Star Trek, for example, presents a utopia, a human utopian future, and I think that that's the future we want to make for everyone, and it also sort of motivates other people to accomplish great things. So yeah.
Absolutely. So, what are the three key pieces of advice you would give to those who are looking to pursue a career in the aerospace field? And what are some of the key fundamentals they need to have behind them for those
Well,
looking?
you have to really study math and science. I mean,
Yes.
you have to kind of like, so STEM, I mean, STEM fields are just really important, right? So I think that that kind of starts with that, I think.
Mm,
Um, but don't be dissuaded. I mean, to be quite honest, never really liked math that much. Like as a, like a math class, as pure math. I was okay at it. I could do it, but it wasn't super motivating to me.
mm,
But I found it a useful tool, let's say. So I
yes.
mean, it was a means to an end. So even if math isn't your favorite class, I think that's okay. And I guess don't be afraid to try something new and try a challenge. And if, the worst you can do is fail, and then you learn something. I mean, failure is a really good teacher, and failure is just an opportunity to learn something new. So,
Yes, absolutely. And the last and final question, Andrew, is what legacy would you like to leave?
well, I mean, I want to make a difference in the world. I want to contribute to the future of humanity and creating a more positive future for humans. And I think that is what motivates me about space flight, is it's being part of the human future.
Amazing. So thank you so much for joining us. And if people want to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
Yeah, Twitter is good at Mars Rader. You can send me a message. Also on Facebook, you can send me a message there, or Instagram, I suppose, as well. Whatever you
Yes.
like. Yeah, it's Mars Rader on that also, and my name Andrew Rader on Facebook. I also have a website where you can send me a message and find all my books and games and everything. Basically, I'm working on.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining today, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.